Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Growth Garden, our podcast dedicated to cultivating career progression and personal growth. I'm your co-host Kevin. Before we start the show, please subscribe, like, and follow our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube so we can make the show even bigger and better. And please leave a comment on topics you would like to hear about and learn about on the show.
I am your co-host, Nikki, and I have the pleasure of introducing Veronica Riccio. Veronica is a distinguished talent development consultant. She owns her own consultancy called Inner Power, and she is the driving force behind innovative talent strategies at leading Fortune 500 organizations. With over a decade of experience in enhancing employee retention and accelerating career progression, she has proven expertise in integrating development programs into corporate talent life cycles. Her work primarily focuses on maximizing talent marketplaces and integrating key career products such as mentorship, sponsorship, and on-the-job development, which are critical to modern talent management strategies. Is there anything I am forgetting about you?
That was the best intro I've ever had. It's amazing. Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Thank you, Veronica, and hi to the Growth Garden. We always start off with a little icebreaker so our listeners get to know you a bit better. So whenever you're ready, please share one fun fact about your career and one fun fact about your personal life.
Well, one about my career is that I invented my own job. For real. I came up with the job title, the description, and all the rest. So that's an interesting one that people normally love to hear, especially in an environment where you want to learn about career progression.
Definitely.
And about myself, I think a lot of people might not know that I came to the UK when I was 19 years old, living on £10 a day and not speaking a word of English and having to buy my Oyster card, which is our travel card. It was really hard to do that, especially because everyone is a foreigner in London. So everyone has got their own accent, and mine was definitely one of them. So just started my life from scratch when I was a teenager, and look at me now.
Yeah, amazing.
I think it's quite interesting to invent your own career title. I actually really like that. So just going now into sort of the journey of your entrepreneurship and your career, you obviously have a very strong background in talent development, but what actually inspired you to enter that field, and how did your previous experience lead you to start your consultancy?
It all started like a few years ago. It was pre-pandemic, and I just generally didn't really know what to do with my career. I had no clue. I was working in data, I was a partnership manager, and everything I was doing was really just building great relationships with engineering teams, etc. But I just couldn't quite put a finger on what was I really supposed to do. I had this like energy inside of me of I want to do something different. I love the way I interact with people, and I love how I can influence them to do great things. So there was like a little bit of a bit of a sort of coach inspiration in there somewhere, but I was very far away from even thinking of becoming a coach or anything down that line. So I remember I joined a talk of someone working in the organization where I was, and she was talking about how she was doing her full-time job, and then she also had another company, and she was like managing her work life so well, and it was incredibly inspirational. And I remember thinking, she's great and so confident, and how can she do so many things? Like, I can barely just do my day job, and even then I still complain that I'm not really doing what I want to do. So I decided to approach her after the talk, and I've asked her if she was open to get coffee. So that was simple as that, very easy, to which she said yes. And a week after, that person eventually became my first mentor. So the first person that I really admired, I could see something in her. There was something I wanted to become. And then from there, I really started doing different exercises with her, like talking through what I'm trying to do in my career, and also doing some visualization exercises, which I thought were really cool. So we just generally like went into a meeting room and started drawing a little bit, what are my skills, what is what is it that I want to do, and trying to figure out how do you connect strength, weaknesses, etc., ambitions. And she asked me this one question that really changed my career completely, and I didn't know that would be the moment. If I would go back in time, I would want to be like, go for it, Veronica, this is it. So she asked me, if you could choose any job title in the world, what would that be? What is the name of the job that you would do? Which could be anything, right? You could think, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be
I was thinking
anything.
that.
And yeah, like someone would think something like, oh, I'm gonna be an engineer, or etc. And I was like, I think I'm gonna be the head of mentoring of this company. And she was like, sure, that doesn't exist. And I've never heard of anyone with a job title like that, but why not? Let's see where we go. So that's how the journey really started there in a way that I started developing an understanding of how do I use my skills for something that's non-conventional in this case. So rather than thinking, oh, I like helping people, I'm really empathetic, I could influence them to do great things, then let's go and become a coach, or let's go and do something that I can see other people are doing. Instead, I tried to see, okay, well, this organization doesn't have a mentorship program, and let's give it a shot. So I remember what happened next then was genuinely like a lot of challenging of my own beliefs and my own skills, one after the other. All the experiences I went through were things that I would have never thought, because that's what happens when you decide to take a path that's, that's not really set for you. So it's something new. And one of the first things I had to do was speaking in public, which is one of the number one fears in the world, the public speaking. And I had plenty of that, plenty. I'm an introvert at heart, and many people have, both introversion and extroversion in them. But I must say that at that point in my career, introversion was probably 90% of me. And so that's it. So the first thing I had to do was go and tell people that I was going to be their head of mentoring, and I was going to build the biggest mentoring program the world has ever seen. So those were really things that really pushed me forward and pushed me to be like, okay, so if it's a new product, that a new program that people have never seen before, we're going to have to explain them what it is like. So we're going to have to do research about it. And then we need to ask them, what do they want to see in a program? So there was a lot of all of the things that entrepreneur then end up doing. So all the research around your customer, understanding product market fit, and finding product market fit, and pitching to investors, etc. So I was going through all of those steps, which then eventually brought me to Inner Power today. But it's just so much that happened in the middle, and so many different ways in which your corporate life is very translatable to your entrepreneur life. Really, from the moment you go on stage and you put yourself out there and you don't know what you're going to get in return, you could get customers saying, oh, your product sucks, or I don't see any use of that, which you will, because that's the beauty of entrepreneurship as well. So you learn to deal with rejection, you learn to put yourself in really outside of your comfort zone in ways that you've never done before. So yeah, so this is a little bit of a flavor of how I ended up doing these things. It's not something that I had studied for. When I didn't go to mentorship university. I studied business like many other people. I just developed this interest in helping someone in a way without being the center of attention, despite the fact that I ended up being on stage many times for many conferences, etc. But what that light that I have inside of me was shining already when I was a lot younger was very much about how can I make other people successful, utilizing the influence and the inner power that I have. And that's how Inner Power then came up as a company name.
Very cool name. I love it. I think it's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
You've raised valuable points. I think starting off with being bold and leveraging your network, or reaching out to someone you find inspirational on their take on how they got there, and then eventually going yourself into a bit of career coaching with this woman that you've just talked about, and ending up as a coach yourself. I think that's an incredible story, how you became then your own founder of Inner Power, your own consultancy on career development. So thanks for sharing. Veronica, the next question we have is, you worked, I guess, even prior to your own venture, a lot with Fortune 500 companies, and especially doubling down on kind of employee retention and ensuring that employees actually stick with companies rather than leaving and like having a complete influx of people coming in and out. Could you share some key strategies or challenges you faced in achieving such impactful results with those companies that you've worked on when it comes to employee retention?
Yeah, absolutely. So companies spend millions on attracting the right talent. Is one of the things that is one of the biggest costs of organizations. And we find many times that, like, despite that all this budget is put towards attracting them, there is really not much put into retaining them the right way. There is a lot of let me just get a LinkedIn learning, or let me just, oh yeah, there's a training, oh there's a speaker we can invite and she's gonna tell you all about X, Y, and Z. But the interesting part that I started working on with companies is really like, how can you leverage the people that are already in the organization, and how can you create an environment where they help each other, so that sort of building those connections and then bring them forward and bring them towards what they're trying to do with their career. So there's two aspects of it, really. Like, there is the aspect of career ownership. So are you giving your employees the tools to own their career and bring it forward, utilizing, again, the network around them? And the other one is, like, the great thing that mentorship does, or the programs like that I've developed do, is creating that safe space for people to be able to say, look, I don't think I'm great at that, and that thing is normally a skill. I'm not great at public speaking. I'm not great at building relationships. I'm not great at, building my roadmap for product management, etc. And is there that space to be able to say, I'm not that good at this, so I want to move forward and I want to learn it from someone else, and I am going to ask for help, because that I know that there is a group of people that will help me. So the work that we do really is helping the organization understand that what they really are is a bundle of skills. So they have all these great skills and these great people that they've hired, and they spend a lot of money to hire. So now, how can you leverage those skills not only for the organization to become more successful, but also for them to feel like they are here doing the best work that they can, working in an environment where they're truly supported and they can take the lead. Because that's the other interesting thing that I was working on very, very closely, is the fact that, as we know, especially underrepresented identities tend to have a background where, they've not seen that type of success perhaps around them, or the possibilities that are put in front of them are just not going to be perceived the same way. So how are you creating, and especially with all organizations talking about the importance of inclusion and diversity, so how are you really creating the space for this group of people to be able to move forward in their career in a way that's more, that resonate more and makes more sense, and really helps them elevate, and paying attention to that specifically. So some of the programs that we create are called sponsorship programs. So they're specifically dedicated for inclusion and diversity, to making sure that we elevate our diverse talent and bring them to leadership eventually, which is what we're trying to do. So there is different needs that organizations have. Some of them are focusing more on, perhaps gender diversity, or something specific, an issue that they're trying to solve, or something that they're trying to do better. And then there is the overall concept of understanding that, okay, so I have all of these skills, I have all these people, where do I need more help? Do I need more help in the sales side and engineering side? And I'm talking mainly technology companies as an example. And then how do I make sure that the skills pass from a place to the other? And so I really maximize my internal talent, my employees, to get them to, own their career, and also help me achieve my goals as an organization. So it sounds a little bit complex, but there is some, like, the thing behind it is super simple, which is just, it's the talent that you hire, is the, you hire them for those skills, right? So do you know what they can do, and how can you maximize that, and how can you help them really have a great time? They're spending 90,000 hours of their lifetime working. Let's make it fun. Let's make it great for everyone. So
No, and it's very true. And it's also like, it comes down to the cost to the company, right? It's the acquisition cost of attracting new talent that is costing companies a lot, but then actually they're not spending much. Eventually, with your help, they do on the retention of those, rather than going out and actually getting again new talent, because those that are already in the company leaving because they don't see the growth they are looking for within the company they are. So I think it's a very valuable one, especially in light of, again, I guess the employee market becoming ever more so competitive. But for the employees, it's the same, right? It's like the employers, sorry. It's the same, whereby it's also very difficult to sort out the employees that really match with your culture, with your kind of companies. So why not leverage what you have, right? And make sure that everyone is having the best time they can and develops the best skill sets they can over the course of working for a company. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I think also going into companies and actually taking care of the employees that they already have is so valuable. And I think sometimes that goes way over companies' heads and they just don't really care. But I think having somebody like you come in and actually change that culture, I think is much needed. Just going into like mentorship and career ownership, which seems to be like the central theme. How do you empower individuals to take ownership of their careers? And like, first of all, how do you do it? And why do you believe that is so important?
So the career ownership concept really needs to be something that employees are allowed to do in a way in the space where they work. So all the work that I do really centers around which are the moments when employees think about career progression. Is it when there is a quarterly review? Is it when they speak to their manager in their one-on-one? And which are the points where we can really make it easier for them to express themselves, express what they're trying to do, and create a trusting relationship with people around them, including their manager. So that's definitely one of the keys that we work on. We want to, if organizations currently don't have this sort of transparency and conversations, career conversation with their employees, then it's time to start having those. Because that's one of the fears employees have, right? They feel like, oh, if I want to change job, I'm definitely not going to tell my boss. But it should be like you really need to work on building that culture of safety where with your manager you're allowed to say, actually, you know what, I want to build my product skills and let's say that I work in finance, so I would love to shadow someone in the product space, even if it's just a couple of hours, once every 2 weeks, etc. And then there are different really cool programs that we've developed where people get the opportunity to actually try the job. So, once a week for 3-4 hours of your time, you would go and help another team, achieve their goal. And so
Yeah.
you would kind of like cover for a headcount that's missing in another team, let's say, while you're actually learning a skill, and you have that permission, let's say, from your manager to do that, to build your skills. And also to try things out, because that's the other interesting thing about career ownership, is that once you give people the opportunity to try different things, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to leave your team. It means that you actually give them the chance to find out if that's the route where they want to go. And it really, like, the retention impact is huge, because that's the reason why people then don't leave, because they work for an organization that's giving them the opportunity to be open and honest about their ambition, to go and try new things and figure out what they want to do, and then really do their best. Because the last thing that you want as an entrepreneur, as an organization, is to have people that stay in their job just because you pay them enough money, or just because it's comfortable. Thank you very much, for the benefits and everything that you're giving me. I actually hate my job, but I'm not going to tell you because you're paying my salary and I'm paying rent with that. So the future, especially when you look at AI coming through and stealing all our jobs and all the things that you hear. So what are we doing to make our skills valuable for the future? What are we doing to pivot as the organization pivot, strategy pivot? Then our skills would change too. There is an interesting study that says that lifetime of skills will be something like 5 years very soon, which means that the skills that you have today are not even going to be valuable in 5 years time. This other interesting part is not only the work that I do is not only for the organization to say, oh yeah, sure, let's give something to the employees so they feel like we care. It's more about, okay, great, now this is the future, this is where we're going with AI. Now, how can I make it better so that the people that work with us to achieve our own mission feel like they're actually doing something for themselves? They're actually growing in a direction where the future is going, but where they want to go to. So the concept of career ownership becomes really important, because it really shows that companies are listening to their employees rather than just reacting to the survey that came out and said that the number one reason why our employees are leaving our organization is because of a lack of career opportunities. It's really the understanding, okay, what are those career opportunities that they're seeking, and why do they see a lack of them, while we do so much to give them these opportunities, and all the money that we invest, training, etc. So it's really, I think the work that I do really helps organizations find their space and like redefine their strategy. And like, this is how we provide career opportunities to our employees. This is how we make sure that they have a safe space to build their careers and go and try new things and really continue growing with us, I would say, as an organization.
And I think it's especially the upskilling that is necessary now, right? I mean, upskilling in terms of, to your point, of the industry is changing quite quickly at the moment with new technologies coming in that might replace manual labor that you might be doing now, or it could be just trends that you're following when you work in marketing, for instance, or in other industries whereby the things, an influx of new trends, etc., are just like coming at a much quicker pace than they have in the past. So I think everyone is safe to say that they won't do the same job today that they will do probably in 10 years time. So I think, yeah, investing or companies investing in this upskilling as well as giving employees opportunities to tap into other jobs that might not be their category one or their first and most obvious expertise, I think is super valuable, because then you, by trial and error, discover what you might be doing next and you're actually fit for when it comes to your next step. Amazing, Veronica. I think the next part we wanted to discuss is your actually own company. I mean, all that I guess you have applied and learned through your experiences at companies before, like Expedia, but ultimately, as you shared with us, your own company, Inner Power, you just recently founded. So can you tell us a bit more about Inner Power, how you got to create your own company or start your own company, and if you have any unique approach to all the things we have discussed so far that you feel Inner Power stands for?
So there is a big gap in the market, I think, in the way companies are perceiving career development. So they are focusing very much on the learning side. So they're like, oh, we have learning and development, but they have learning, like they have training, they have courses, they have things like that. But the development side is really what Inner Power is focusing on. So figuring out which kind of programs we can develop so that there is a more structured approach to development, then again leads to career ownership. So a lot of the things that we do are really trying to understand where is the company at and how we can help with the strategy there and how can we integrate any of the programs within their employee life cycle. It's really interesting to see how there is a huge misconception of programs like mentorship. Like many companies you go to, they're like, oh, of course we have a mentorship program. Then you go and ask the employees and they're like, which one? Oh, yeah, I've received an email once. So the interesting change that we've seen with the program that we've implemented in these companies is that people start talking about it as it's natural. You would hear them talking about it on the lift. Oh, my mentor told me that. Oh, have you actually thought about asking your mentor about that? So there is more of an understanding of what this is. What is this mentorship thing? And really, like, I think part of the unique approach that we have is that we're trying to challenge a little bit the way things were done in the past. And that's one of the reasons why the part that I talked about when I invented my job was particularly successful. Because rather than going in and be like, oh, sure, right, so this is a bunch of mentors, this is a bunch of mentees, cool, we're going to match you, and then, off you go. It's really like, do these people understand their roles and expectation well? Okay, fantastic. Which technology can we use? And I use my own technology, or some companies wouldn't have one. So we would use Slack or other technologies that they're using to try and create those sort of, we call them chemistry meetups. So the opportunity for the mentee to meet someone and be like, okay, I like this person, or I don't, I'm going to move forward with someone else, etc. But making it easier, so utilizing technology as a core, of course, but also really making sure that people understand that all of this would work if you are making it work in a way. So have you done your goal setting properly? Does your goal make sense? Have you communicated that to your manager or to others? So to get that accountability, right? So there's a lot about how do we make sure that the ownership falls on the people that want to make that change, that the life cycle works, and so you can talk about it with your manager, and your manager will share their experience on how they mentor others, and are we utilizing technology the right way as well, rather than just creating the match and sending everyone an automated email saying, oh, you've been matched with this person. And some people will be like, oh yeah, no, no, I don't want that. Or
Yeah.
or am I actually being told because I've done something wrong? So there's a lot of different ways in which people would take the message of like, here is someone that can help you. Or other people leaders, people manager might think, oh no, you don't need a mentor. I can help you. I'm the mentor. I am. So yes, so there is really like the whole approach behind, and the way we use the framework is really understanding how can we make the whole experience better. So it's not just, oh, here is mentorship, here is, it's not a diagnosis.
Yeah. It's a good approach. I love the terminology or the idea of a chemistry meetup, of like actually finding out if the person you're being assigned to, or you might actually get connected to within as a mentor and a mentee in a big company, is not just by random choice, but actually by trying out trial and error again, and finding out if you really vibe and you can actually get inspired or aspired by the one that you've been matched with. Because I can speak out of own experience with other bigger corporations I've been working in. It's not always as straightforward, and they seem to make it very straightforward. And then I guess to your second point of actually then actioning anything you are discussing with your mentorship, it's a mentor. It's great that you come in eventually as well with your company on making sure that things are being tangibly executed or worked on with the mentor and the mentee, because I think that's also sometimes lacking, whereby sometimes it's just someone who wants to give their time or wants to put on a CV, I'm a mentor, but then ultimately there is no action points coming out of this mentorship program, right? Because they don't have the time or the skill set, to be fair, to do that. So great, thank you. So Veronica, the next question I wanted to ask you is around actually like real life case studies that you might have already had with Inner Power. So as you said, innovation and talent, career development, as well as like formulating strategies is crucial. Can you maybe tell us a bit of a real world problem that you had with a client and how you solved it through your innovative approach?
Yeah, so one of the companies where we were working with is working really on understanding how all the resources they've put in place don't seem to work after the initial launch. So one of the interesting things is that things like mentorship are really exciting, especially for companies that have never done it before. So they would go ahead and launch their mentorship program, be like, yes, here is mentorship for you all, here is the technology, go in and engage with it. And then the engagement drops and then nobody uses it anymore. And they ask why. So that's how we get to work together there and figuring out, okay, great. So this is where you're at, this is what you've done with the program. Is anything else happening? Do you have any event? Do you have any town hall? Is there any, like, what's happening within the organization already? Like, oh yeah, of course we have these events and these events and these events. Okay, and you also have an onboarding, like things like that, like moments where there is a moment in which the employee wants to learn something, whatever that is. So we tried and look at how many other opportunities there were to infuse mentorship and make it part of the whole experience, and they were just not being utilized at all. So if there is something like a product event or something within the organization, is it then an opportunity for people that want to learn about product to perhaps go and ask questions to the people that spoke on stage, for example? Or can you create a group mentoring session right after that? Can you take half an hour in which you have some breakouts and people can go in small groups and say like, oh, this thing that the speaker mentions is really interesting. I would have never thought of doing it that way. This is how I'm doing it in my job. How are you doing it? So are there ways in which there is a networking opportunity that's not being utilized? So some of the problems that really I think companies face is not having a connection between the efforts that they already have. And that's where we go and help them out. So rather than, again, having LinkedIn Learning, just sitting there and that's me, or mentorship as a tick box exercise, that's it, we've done mentorship. It's how can you then make sure that when there is a person becoming a manager for the first time, for example, is that person finding a mentor that has done it before? Do you understand how valuable it is for someone who is being promoted to being a people leader, never done it before, only read it on books, and that person will be in charge of others who might leave if that goes wrong. So there are certain moments within the employee life cycle, we call it, that are just so delicate. So it's really looking at where the organization is struggling with, which are the opportunities where there is really not that sort of support and ownership that they can really make people feel empowered. where mentorship, sponsorship, coaching, gigs, which is the on-the-job development part, shadowing, where could you infuse those so that it helps them out? So yeah.
I think that's very interesting when you say, also helping people out in stages where, for example, they're ready on paper, but actually they might have no idea how to do this in real life. And when you really see like a big transitions from like having had a manager to being a manager, for example, I think this is super valuable to have somebody to be like, hey, actually, this is how it's done in real life, not just in practice. So I thank you for sharing that. And I think this leads us really into now the third section of our podcast, which is more about balancing work and life. So first, I like to know, or we'd like to know, because you obviously run your own career coaching business and you also have a personal life, I assume. How do you manage balancing both like running your own business and then also, having your own personal life?
Yeah, that's always a great question. I think it's the struggle of everybody. One of the things that I've learned in my experience in the past few years has really been to just be a little bit kinder to myself, because the reality is that there are moments when you're going to be really busy and that you have a structure in place, that at 9 a.m. that's what you're doing, at 6 p.m. that's what you're doing, and you want to finish work at 5:30. So it's great to have all of these intentions and doing your best to stick to them, but it's also important to understand that there are just going to be ups and downs and moments in which it's going to be easier and moments in which it's not going to be. So one of the things that I do, it's just intentionally trying my best. So if there are days in which I'm full of energy and I work out every morning, or I worked out 3 times a week. I'm currently training for a marathon, so training
Oh, wow.
is not an option. Like, you have to train, because otherwise your body would be like, nah, I'm just gonna stay in bed today. You can go running like with your mind or something. So you really try and stick to your plan, try and stick to your training. Or another interesting thing that I try and do is, when I finish work and I can tell that something is maybe bothering me, or it's on my mind and I can't really switch it off at 5:30, sometimes you just can't. Then I just go to the people I love, in this case my partner, who listens to me every night, and it'll be like, look, this is what's happening to me and I think I need to talk it through. This is what's bothering me, and I promise let's talk about this for like 10-15 minutes, and then we're gonna try and switch off, but at least I get it off my chest. So it's like, I think it comes down to practicing self-care, which is just being a little bit more aware that, sometimes work leaks into life and life leaks into work, and it's okay to talk about it and be more vocal. I think it's, express yourself as much as you can, and don't bottle it up, and don't think like you should wake up. I mean, I read the 5 a.m. Club, and by the way, absolutely love that book. I don't wake up at 5 a.m. I wake up at 6 because my schedule, but it's not about, it's not really about like, oh, see, I'm a failure because I'm supposed to wake up at 5 a.m., but I'm not. So I'm never going to be a high performing person like those people that I see on telly. It's not really about that. It's about, sometimes you wake up at 5 a.m. and sometimes you don't. And you got to be kind with yourself, because that's life and being human.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really nice thing to think about also, that even though work sometimes could be all consuming, if you actually speak it through with someone, or you kind of like get things off your chest, then sometimes either answers come to you or somebody can help you, and then you also get like mental capacity back that you can use in another way then, so I think that's quite cool. Now that we know that what you kind of do for yourself in situations, what advice would you offer your clients or employees of your clients to maintain a work-life balance?
What I would advise my client, and is connected to the work that I do, is creating the space. So for example, if we think about, it's actually very common, it happens a lot, mothers returning to work. So a lot of companies think that, yeah, of course we have a policy for returning to work, maybe they can go part-time, or, oh yeah, their career resumes, and just assume that that's the way things are, especially when you're thinking on the enterprise level. Oh, that's the rule, that's the policy. they completely forget of what it's like on an individual level and a team level, and they just overlook that part. So there are great programs that I've seen that we've developed ourselves that were returning from maternity, etc., but really focusing on creating a space for people that have experiences that are just not that unique. They happen every day. Like, people go on maternity leave every day. So why are we treating it as just, oh yeah, sure, that they're gonna deal with it, while we know the moms returning to work do face a lot of challenges, that their career all of a sudden is different, their priorities are different. And it's so interesting because a lot of our leaders are parents themselves, and they tend to be like, oh yeah, sure, if I can do it, they can do it too. But it doesn't work that way. So creating the space, I think, is the one thing that I would give as a work-life balance, sort of like acknowledge that there are just moments in your career where life takes over. Create the space for those conversations to happen, or for these people, for example, to find a mentor that is also was a mom 2 years before or the year before, and can really tell them, like, these are the resources. Do you know that you have this sort of benefit, that you have this, that you have that? This is the nursery I use, or so. So like, if you don't have that space, definitely create one and make sure those conversations are happening and people can find support.
Now we're going over to the rapid fire questions. And that's just for our audience to get to know you a bit better, and also ourselves. I'll ask you two things and you're just going to tell us your preference or your answer. So the first one is, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
I'm Italian, so it's
Coffee.
definitely coffee. Definitely.
For sure. Are you a morning person or night owl?
Very much morning person, especially connected to the 5 a.m. club that I've read.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. And then it leads to the next question, which might be already answered, which is one book that changed your life.
No, actually, I would pick another one. Definitely, that book is great. I would say there is one that I really like for some reason. Like, I read it like really early in my career. It's "You're a Badass" by Jen Sincero, and it's like, I've read a lot of different books, and there is some that are really brilliant, but for some reason that book is just funny, and the way it talks about empowering yourself to follow your dreams is just a little different. So I think she's famous probably because she's sassy and fun. So every time I normally listen to audiobooks because I run, so I listen to them when I run. I would say that's one book that I would just advise people to just read, and because it allows you to treat like this sort of doubts that you have with a little bit more of a light-hearted approach. But also it really gets the point. So yeah, anyway, that's the book. I really don't know why, but that's the one book that I absolutely love.
And then lastly, is there any advice you've ever received that is like the best advice you think you've ever received?
Yeah, like one of the reasons why I was able to create my job is because I just decided to ask for it, which sounds simple. It really does, but nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to look silly, or there's a lot at stake when you ask something. But my mentor told me when it was the time, just ask the CEO if you can speak to him. And that was the one advice that changed my life, because really, like, you're just asking, and if you get a no, then you get a no, but at least you tried. So my advice to anyone is just go and ask.
So going into like the last section of our podcast now, those are our like closing reflections. But if you look back on your career journey, what advice would you offer someone who's at a career crossroad, unsure of what path to take next?
Yeah, go and find someone that has done it before, whatever that is. Trust me, there will be someone that has done it before. Like, even when I was looking, I remember when I was looking for my job, the head of mentoring, I went on LinkedIn and I put head of mentoring, and I was just like, oh, that person does something similar, and go talk to them. Just go and have that conversation. Networking will not be a waste of time, despite the fact that it's perceived that way many times, because there's a lot of people you need to speak to in order to speak to the right person many times, right? But find someone that is doing something similar to what you want to do, and go talk to them. You might even find out that that's not what you want to do at all, but you will have that experience. You will be like, yes, I've done my research, and I know I've spoken to the person who does it, and definitely speak to more than one person. That's another advice. Like that's the interesting thing about mentorship as well, is it takes some time to find the right mentor, also because you shouldn't just take the first word that you get. You should think through options and be like, oh, that advice sounds right, that advice does not. That person inspires me to be better. That person is just throwing knowledge at me. So test.
No, that's very true. And then the last one is, if you could go back in time and change any decision or aspect of your past, what would that be, and how would you approach it differently with all the hindsight and knowledge you got to this date?
I think if I would go back, I would, but maybe many people think that about themselves, but I would be more financially savvy. Like, I remember when I was in my 20s, it was just like, yeah, I got a salary, let's spend it. Woohoo! But yeah, I think that's one thing that would make a difference in today. Veronica, 33 years old today, would be, if I would have saved more maybe. And because that's one of the habits that really, like, you need to be really disciplined for. And I think a lot of teenagers, they don't tend to have any of that. So if you don't have it because in your family was not really like one of the practices, let's say, just, educate yourself to be more financially sound.
Yeah, no, that's very valuable and true advice.
Good insights.
And no regrets for your great 20s.
And that's it for today. So thank you, Veronica. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Growth Garden, for sharing your insights, your valuable advice with us and with our listeners. And we, of course, hope that our listeners enjoyed this as much as we have. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin and Nikki. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Veronica. And again, big thank you to our listeners to join our today's podcast or episode. Please like, subscribe, and follow our channels on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and of course, Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, and keep cultivating your growth journey. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.